Welcome. I'm Sebastian Mahfood, and you're listening to WCAT Radio, the on-air wing of En Route Books and Media, bringing you the dulcet sounds of Catholic wisdom.
And welcome to the first live TV broadcast of Cry Oneness, a show where you can share your miracles, your experiences, your strengths, your poetry, your music, whatever you want to share. We're live today from my home at Edis Road. We're on the patio today because it's a beautiful day. And I have a guest today. My friend Al Forte is here from walkforpeace.org. And he has an amazing story. But before we start, I just want to remind everybody that Cry Oneness is all about sharing your miracles. So I'm trying to get a lot of live guests now that I'm doing videos. So if you're interested in appearing on Cry Oneness, please give me a phone call at 203-554-1378. That's 203-554-1378. And we'd love to have a lot of people on sharing about what God is doing in your life. And Al, God is certainly doing a lot in your life lately, as he is in mine. So welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And to start off with, why don't you share a little bit about how God came into your life, because that's what the show is all about, and then you can move on to your cause.
Good. So 30 years ago, if somebody asked me, do you believe in God, I would have said yes. Go to Mass on Sunday and holidays. Raised all my kids Catholic. They all received their sacraments. 2 of them went to Catholic school. I supported the church. I volunteered at the church. And I prayed on appropriate occasions. Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter. Oh, and when I was in big trouble. 30 years ago, if somebody would have asked me then, is what difference does believing in God make in your life? I wouldn't have had an answer. My life was turning into a mess. My marriage was going south. I was in the process of getting divorced. Not only couldn't I get a job, I didn't want a job. I was depressed. And I was drinking too much too much. And by the grace of God, and a priest in the Catholic Church, I was led to AA. And early on in AA, a woman shared she prayed every day. And that was the day I started to pray every day. I now believe that was my spiritual awakening. I really wanted that burning bush type of thing. Never happened. But praying every day happened and worked. See, I believe in prayer not only because of what it's done in my life, but I've been in a 12-step program for 30 years, and I've seen it work in hundreds and hundreds of people's lives. People who should be dead, in jail, or have committed suicide. And these people now are leading productive lives, married with families. So that's the way it works. Now I was going to show... I forgot my rosaries. They were in the car. So I'm going to talk about prayer, but I should really be talking about my dad. My dad said the rosary every day coming back from World War II. He had a pair of rosaries that were worn, cobbled together with string that we used so much. And I believe if my dad would have said to me, when I was a kid, they used to call me Freddie. So I believe my dad said to me, Freddie, if you prayed with half the diligence that I did, your life might not have turned into a mess. And if everybody else prayed for at least half the effort that I put into it, the world might not be in the mess it is in today, with all the wars that have occurred since World War II. And that's how I basically I believe prayer works. So that's the reason I started this mission of spreading the message of praying for peace. I believe we all use prayer. It's the way we use prayer looks like we're putting the seatbelt on after the accident. After the accident. We see, after all the tragedies that happened, 9/11, Sandy Hook, and I go on and on, all the people who are praying after the accident has happened. Maybe if we prayed before, we might not be in the mess, or the messes will eventually be in.
Let's stop for a second and let's focus on what caused you to do this Walk for Peace. What happened that motivated you to do the Pray for Peace organization?
9/11. 9/11 happened. My children's mother worked at the World Trade Center. We didn't find out until 4 in the afternoon that she was alive.
Well,
And I remember meeting her at the train station in Stanford with my son Matt, and they just embraced and cried. So I have that picture in my mind. But that didn't cause me to do anything. So my God's got a sense of humor. I get roped into things. He ropes me into things.
Very persuasive.
Yeah, but he does it in a comical way.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2005, I was living in Michigan. My social life, I had very little social life. I was helping my son with a business, and I decided to join Toastmasters. For those of you who don't know what Toastmaster is, it's an international organization with chapters throughout the world helping people to build their confidence and improve their public speaking, hence Toastmasters. So I joined the Toastmasters Club in Benton Harbor, Michigan. It was part of Whirlpool Corporation. And I'd given a couple of speeches, and then I was supposed to give a speech to encourage people to do something. And it was shortly after President Bush was on the aircraft carrier with the big sign, "Mission Accomplished." Now, I've lived during the Vietnam period, and I was in the Army during the period. I'd never been to Vietnam, thank God. And all I saw was that we're getting in the same type of mess we got in before. It's going to be a mess. And I don't think it took a genius to figure that out. It's turned into more of a mess than I thought it was going to be. Just to digress a little, 2,500 to 3,000 people died on 9/11. Over 6,000 American soldiers have died in the war on terror. Many, many thousands should be dead, but we have such a medical system that they're able to survive with one arm, one leg, and it's going on and on. Oh, and hundreds of thousands of Afghanistan and Iraqis have been killed because of this war. So anyhow, that was going on in the back of my mind. So I decided to give a speech to encourage people to pray for peace. Now my goal was to get the Best Speech Award. I didn't care if anybody prayed for peace or not. My goal was to get the Best Speech Award. And I gave this speech. And I got the Best Speech Award. The opening line was really terrific. I made a big booming sound like this. Boom! And there I was, jettisoned to the air, fell to the ground like a rag doll. And when I became conscious, 20 feet away from me, there was a young man and 2 little girls in a pool of blood. It was my son, Chris, and my 2 granddaughters. And I paused, like I'm pausing now. And then I said, that's not true. My son and daughters are alive and well in Michigan. However, we see that on the TV all the time, like it's a movie. In these war scenes where we see hundreds of people being killed, on and on and on, and there's somebody's mother, father, sister, or brother. What are we going to do about that? Maybe prayer. And then I went on to show all the economic benefits of peace. And as part of that speech, I gave out a Pray for Peace card. It was a card with a group of soldiers in a desolate area looking over in a prayer circle praying. And I used that picture, and on the front of the card I said, "They pray for peace, will you?" And on the back of the card I wrote a short prayer. So I gave the speech, handed out the cards as part of the speech, and I had 200 leftover cards. Because when you go to Staples, you get those business cards, and you get 250. So I didn't know what I was going to do with them, and I thought of what my mom said, waste not, want not. So I decided to print out those cards and hand them out. Excuse me. So it was very difficult. It was very difficult to hand out those cards. Mainly, I was worried about what would people think of me. Are they going to think I'm a religious fanatic, or a Jesus zealot, or something like that? And I've come to believe, I've given out 70,000 of them so far. And I've never had one bad, negative experience. I had one sad experience. I gave it to a woman. I'll just say, "Can I give you one of these cards?" The woman passed me, and about 20 feet later she came around and she gave me the card back. And she said, "I don't do this." And I assumed she meant she didn't pray. She didn't pray. And that'll take me to something I read this morning. Oswald Chambers, in his book, he was writing about prayer, and he said prayer is not natural for man to do. It is not natural. And the reason we pray is so we change, and then we can help make the world a better place. But we have to change first. So this whole mission is about spreading the message of praying for peace. Peace first in ourselves, in our families, in our cities and towns, and in our country and in the world. So I started to hand out those cards, and I had a humorous experience. I was handing out in New York City. I never did it on a consistent basis. I just had these cards in my car, in my pocket, so whenever I went someplace I could hand them out if it seemed like I should do it. Meanwhile, nobody I knew ever saw me hand out those cards. And very few people I knew even knew I handed out those cards. So I was handing out the cards on 2nd Avenue and 65th Street, thereabouts. I had driven somebody to the hospital for a cancer checkup, and I had plenty of time. I had the cards out, and I was handing the cards out. And in New York City, people walk by you like you're part of the pavement. They don't even see you. Now you hand out a card, and they're just on their way. So a construction worker walked by, and he said, "I don't want a porn card." And I said, wait, I look like I'm giving out a porn card? And he goes, and I gave him one of the cards, and he saw it was a Pray for Peace card, and he laughed, right? So, and then every now and then he'd walk by, and he'd say, make the same line, and we both laughed. And that was the day I had shirts like this made, Pray for Peace shirts, and hats with Pray for Peace on it. So if I'm giving out cards, people won't think I'm handing out porn cards. It was that simple. So I was handing out these cards for a while, and everything was working fine. I'm going to tell you how much you need people, or how much we need people to support us. I was handing out the cards for a while. I was also working for my son in Stanford as the office manager, and we had an advertising campaign, and we created some large postal cards that were going to be mailed, and a friend of mine worked for the printing company, and we had them do it. And they printed the cards out and mailed it out. We got some business from it, and it cost like $2,000 to $3,000. So I said to my friend, "You work for this printing company. Maybe they could print out some of these Pray for Peace cards free." And he said, "I'll talk to my boss." And he called me up. He said, "The cards are ready." So I came in to pick up the cards, and it was a box about 6 inches long. And I said, "How many cards are in there?" And the woman said, 1,200. I said, "That means I have to hand out 1,200 cards? I just wanted 100. So she gave me the cards. But the feeling I got, more than the cards were for free, is that somebody else thought what I was doing was worth it. And I started to hand out those cards. I'll continue on the card line for a second. So every now and then I would hand out the cards, then I would call up and get some more cards, and every time I called up, there were more cards. So the last time I went to pick up the cards, I said, "I'm here to pick up the Pray for Peace cards." The receptionist said, "Fine, they're over there on a shelf." And I said, "I don't see them on the shelf." And it was a box, like 9 inches by 9 inches by 9 inches. And I said, "What's in there?" She said, 13,800 cards. So I said to her, I guess you never want to see me again. But I handed out those cards. As I'm doing that process, one day I went to St. Bridget's Church, about this time of the year, in fact. It was a beautiful day. Went into St. Bridget's Church. They have a beautiful stained glass window. The sun was beaming through the stained glass window, and I was early. And I'm a just on time Catholic, so I'm very seldom early for Mass. But this time I was 10 minutes early. It must have been because of my schedule. So it's sitting down, thinking about nothing. Just my mind was blank. And I had a picture of a Muslim dad, mom and dad in a desolate area, looking over the bodies of their dead children. And I have 3 children. So I know how much that would hurt. My mother used to say, the worst thing could happen to her was for one of her children to die before she died. And we're all still alive. My mother passed a couple of years ago. So that was the image I had in my mind. And then I heard this voice. And it just said, "Al, you can do something about this." And that was it. "Al, you can do something about this." And somebody who was interviewing me once said, "Do you believe it was in God?" And I said, "Well, I don't call myself Al. I might call myself some bad names, but I don't call myself Al." So I kept on thinking of that thought. "Al, you can do something about this." I had no idea what it meant. So I said, maybe I can do a Pray for Peace walk. And that would be to encourage people to pray for peace. Just like a cancer walk or the heart attack walk, those types of walks, just like that. Except it was only me. So I said, if I walk from Greenwich to Stanford with a Pray for Peace shirt on, nobody would know. So I said, it's got to be a long walk. So I said, I'll walk from Fenway Park to Chicago. And I got on my computer and I said, I think I'll walk from Yankee Stadium to Chicago. Now, God gave me a gift, and the gift he gave me was ignorance. When you look at walking from New York to Chicago on a laptop, it doesn't look that long. Not only doesn't it look that long, it doesn't give you certain warnings. Like it didn't say in Pennsylvania, there'll be things like mountains that you have to walk over. Those mountains I've driven over. When you walk over, it's a completely different experience. So anyhow, I'm looking, just thinking. I don't really intend to do it. I'm just like playing on my computer. You know, I'll start at Yankee Stadium for a Yankee baseball game, and then I'll go to Philadelphia for a Philadelphia game. And I estimated how long it would take me to walk from Yankee Stadium to Philly. And the Phillies were home. And then I estimated how long it would take me to walk from Philadelphia to Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh was home. Cleveland was home. Detroit was home. And Chicago was home. So I'm getting the feeling God's trying to tell me something. So I decide that I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it. I had a couple of shirts made, but I knew I had to be in shape to do it physically and spiritually. So I lived in Norwalk at that time, and I would walk from my house in Norwalk to St. Aloysius Church in New Canaan and walk back. It was 6.2 miles. And I would do that 4 times a week for a while. And as I did it, meanwhile, I never told anybody I was going to do this because I wanted the option not to do this and not to make a big deal about not doing it. All right? Because I knew it was kind of crazy. I was 65 years old and I don't walk 1,000 miles. So I kept on walking to church, and then my sister found out that I was going to do this walk because an incident happened with my mom, and I had to tell her I was going to do this walk, and she said, "What do you think, you're Forrest Gump?" And I thought about it for a while. I said, he's a pretty cool guy. So even though I laughed, I said, that's pretty cool. He was a cool man. So that's going on. And then I looked at hotels in New York City. They were like $300-400 a night. So I have a good friend of mine, my best friend, in fact, Joe Ross. He's one of those people that know everything. You know, those people that read and know everything. Joe's one of those people. So I called Joe up. I told him I was going to do the walk. I have to get a cheap hotel in New York City. And he said, the Pod Hotel, $90 a night. I'm not going to describe it, but it was terrific. It worked out great. Clean, served the purpose, and I made a reservation. So it was a Friday before I was going to go on the walk, starting from my house, walking by myself. Remember I told you about ignorance? What I was going to do was I was going to walk from Yankee Stadium to my brother's house in Staten Island. Then have my brother to drive me to the first place in New Jersey and walk back. That means I'd cover that distance. Then I'd start walking from the place in New Jersey to Boston, Philadelphia first. And I was going to call a taxi cab company up to pick up my stuff at the motel I was staying at and bring it to the next hotel. So one of the problems there, which I subsequently found out, is the hotels and motels aren't on the route you're taking. They're further away than the distance you're walking sometimes. So the Friday before I was going to walk, I walked to St. Aloysius. As on the way to St. Aloysius Church, I started to think of all of the problems that could happen to me on the way. I never thought about the problems that could occur on the way. How much was it going to cost? Suppose my cell phone breaks. Suppose one of these cab guys robs my stuff. Suppose I fall, etc. And it was like, when you worry like that, it's like a phonograph with a scratch in it. It's going over and over again. So I got to Mass. I had no idea what the priest was saying because I was in my head with worry. And I went and received communion. And I came back to the pew. And when I got back to the pew, this is what I heard. Oh, Al, this walk is not about you. Oh, and Al, the money you're worried about is not your money. It's mine. You can do with it with whatever you want. Oh, and Al, your life, that's not yours either. It's mine. You can do with it with whatever you want. And the worry went away. The problems didn't go away. So on the way back to my house, I called my friend Joe Ross up, who knew I was doing the walk, and who lives in Queens. He and his wife at that time had one car, and he's retired. And I said, Joe, if you come up today, Friday, So this is like 9 o'clock in the morning. You come up today, I'll pick you up at the Stanford train station. You can sleep over, and you can use my car for 2 to 3 months while I'm gone. And they go, that sounds good. And I said, can you drive me to Yankee Stadium tomorrow, though? Because that was going to be expensive. So he said, sure. So Joe came up. We went to Polici's for dinner. We loved Polici's. We talked about stuff we had in common and stuff in our family. But we didn't talk much about the walk, because when don't do a walk, there's nothing to talk about. On the way back to my house, Joe said to me, you know, Al, I think it would be good for me and my marriage if I go with you as the driver. You're going to be paying for all the motel rooms, right? And I said, yes. So Joe joined me as the driver. If Joe didn't join me, the walk would have lasted maybe a week or 10 days. The first person, he couldn't join me right away, so the first place he met me was just outside of New Brunswick, New Jersey. Meanwhile, I have my computer with me, and I'm drawing maps of the route I'm going to take. So we met for lunch, and Joe said, what's the route you're going to take? So I bring out this piece of paper with the route drawn out on it. It was a little confusing, and Joe said, looks a little confusing. I said, yeah. He said, why don't we drive the route first and then you walk it? I said, great idea. We got lost driving. If you walk, you might not know for a day or two that you're going in the wrong direction. So that's what happened, and that's how the walk started. We developed a nice system. He's a really good friend. The best part about having Joe was he was more concerned about my well-being than I was. Second, he was really good at maps, although we had arguments about maps. And I had a companion. It wasn't like I was doing it alone. You know, it doesn't like I'm doing it alone.
How many miles a day were you guys doing?
15 miles a day, except when we hit those mountains. That was a little more difficult than 15. So we would start off, we'd go to a motel, walk 15 miles, go back, pick myself up, go to another motel. And we did that a couple of times. And then we figured out we should drive 30 miles from where I stop and get a motel. And drive me back, and I walk 15, because 15 miles is not long, doesn't take long to drive. And we go 15, and so we kind of leapfrog the entire way. I'll tell you one thing, when he would drive me back the 15 miles, we both said, gee, that's pretty long distance to walk. And then we hit the mountains. I've been to San Francisco. So these roads looked like the hills of San Francisco. The only trouble is they didn't end, and they curve, and you go around. So you didn't know when it was going to end. So it was extremely strenuous. But a humorous situation, as I was walking over these mountains, a young man on a bicycle was transversing the mountains. And he passed me, said hello, and then I eventually came around a big bend, and there he was lying on the road, was at that time a big breakdown lane, and he's just huffing and puffing. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I just graduated from the University of Delaware, and I'm going to go to Berkeley in California. So I decided to ride my bicycle from Berkeley, California, from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. I said, wow, that's quite an endeavor. And he said, and the other day I pulled into one of these campsites to camp overnight. He had his camping stuff. And the young woman there said, it's $40. And he said, $40? That's me in the tent. How can it cost $40? She said, that's $40. And he pointed to an RV, and he said, how much are they paying? And she said, $42. $42, a big RV, 5 of them, taking showers, electricity and everything, and you're going to charge me $40? And she goes, yes. So he just takes off. But after he took off, he said, I'm going to have to sleep someplace. And he's driving to a nice town that had nice front lawns, modest place. So he said, maybe if I asked somebody if I could pitch my tent on their lawn, they would let me to do it. And the first house he knocked on, he told the woman what he was doing, and she said, I think that's terrific. We have an extra room. You can have dinner with us tonight, sleep over, shower and shave, take off in the morning. So the guy says, great. So he's sitting down having dinner with them, and their daughter came home. She was the girl at the campsite asking for the $40.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Right? So we're not a glum lot, all right?
Yeah.
So I have stories like that, right? So walked over mountain number 1, walked over mountain number 2. Well, meanwhile, Joe and I are getting little arguments about maps. Mm-hmm. He's a map guy, and I'm a computer guy. And he would say, the map doesn't show this, and I would say, the computer shows that, and I'd compromise and do the map. Until one day, I asked him, when was that map printed? These maps were printed 5-10 years ago. They weren't up to date. So I would win those arguments with the computer. We hit mountain number 3, just like all the rest of them. You find out when you're walking on roads like this, there's a very important line on the road, and that line is that white line. And there's a name for that white line called the edge line. I would never walk on a road that didn't have one of those edge lines. We tried it once or twice, and I was going to die. So we're walking. So we go. This is mountain number 2, and we're driving it to test it. So here's the edge line. A foot away from the edge line is one of those barriers. On the other side of the barriers, there's nothing. So it's going to be tough. And Joe says to me, look at the other side of the road. There's a big breakdown. He said, what I can do is drive you to the top of the mountain. You can walk down one side. I'll drive you again to the top and walk down the other side. I thought that was a brilliant idea. I covered the distance, and we did it. And then we had some newspaper articles written about the walk. The first newspaper article was written in Westchester, 2 words, Pennsylvania. And a young man wrote the article, and I read the article, and he called me in the article a peace activist. Nobody ever called me a peace activist again, because I made it clear that peace activists don't look too peaceful to me. I'm a prey for peace activists. So every time they interviewed you, I would use that line with the reporter that was going to write the article. So we continued on a walk, and then we got to Lime, Ohio. And a young woman came out, took my picture of the article, and it's the best picture I have of me walking. It's walking across Ohio with cornfields in the background and a high sky with beautiful clouds, and I'm walking on the road. It looks great. And the other part of Ohio was, once I got to Ohio, I thought I died and went to heaven. And the reason for it, I could see where I was going to walk for 50, 60 miles. It was flat. Not only was it flat, then if you're walking through the country and you look at all the corn we grow, you don't think there should be any person starving in this country. From one horizon to the next horizon, there was corn. So so we had a number of articles printed, and Joe and I would go back to that town to pick up the articles, because the articles were written a day or 2 after I had walked through the town. So this day, this Lime, Ohio had a much bigger circulation than all the other articles. So they printed the newspaper, and when I got to the town called Van Nuys, I think it's Van Nuys, Ohio. And we went to dinner, And I never wore my big Pray for Peace shirts. I would wear the shirts like this because I was off duty. So I sat down to eat, and these waitresses recognized me from the newspaper article. And they gathered around, and we started to have this conversation. And you have two feelings about that. Number one, you want to be humble, and the other part is you really like the adulation.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So it's like you're struggling with two things. So finally, one waitress stayed, and we started to talk. And after a while, we got to talk about, I have 3 kids. She said, I have 1 child. She was talking about her life a little. I was talking about my life a little. And finally, she said, well, I really have 2 children. My son is 4. And I had him when I was 16. And I gave him up for adoption. And she just said it like that. And then we finished our conversation. And then finished eating. And when I got in the car, I turned to my friend Joe and I said, you know, what that young woman did is much more difficult than what I'm doing. She spent 9 months carrying the baby, all right, and then gave it up for adoption. So I said, Joe, tomorrow let's go back to this restaurant. So we went back to the restaurant, and she was there. She was in the kitchen now. So I went to talk to her in the kitchen. And she said, oh, it was a very bad time of my life. I was forced, and I had to go through a trial. And she didn't say raped. She said I was forced. She was so healthy. I was amazed how healthy she was with what went on in her life. That was the most moving story of the entire walk. And I had other ones. And you never know how you're going to affect somebody's life. Another restaurant, some waitresses came up to me. I gave them a couple of cards. One waitress said, can you give me a few cards? I'm going to send them to my dad. He's in Iraq. This will mean a lot to him. In fact, you never know when something you're going to do is going to touch somebody. You just don't.
Yeah.
And I just was coming back from Wisconsin for a wedding, and I was going with an elderly woman who's a friend of mine, and we had to wait to get off the plane because the wheelchair was coming and she doesn't move that quickly. And as we're waiting, I had a card in my pocket, and I gave it to one of the stewardess. And as soon as I gave it to her, she became emotional. And she said, you don't know how much this means to me. Mm-hmm. I don't want to talk about it. I said, well, I don't want to go through the details. And I said, so I don't know who that person is that you're talking about, but I believe he's in a better place. So we never know when we do something that's going to touch somebody. And I have a feeling sometimes we'll just never know.
Right.
Until we go to heaven. I think it's like the story of A Wonderful Life, where Clarence the Angel brings James Stewart around. James Stewart says, I wish I was never born. And Clarence the Angel said, I can arrange that. And he takes him through his life. Right? Like, to show him the differences he made in people's lives that he didn't even know about. And I think that's what God's going to say to us. He's not going to say, this is what you didn't do. He's going to say, this is what you did. So I finished that walk.
Let's stop for a second and
Sure.
wrap a few things up, because we've been talking a while about walking and some of the people you ran into and your personal feelings and what was going on at the time. But what is your goal? What do you hope to accomplish by doing this Walk for Peace? And what have you already accomplished? Like, you haven't talked about the baseball stadiums at all, and I know you've been on field a couple of times, so that must have been amazing, right? To be on field at a stadium. So why don't you tell the people a little bit about some of the major things that the organization has accomplished.
Okay, so first, I'm not walking for peace. I'm walking for prayer.
Right.
All right? It's the prayer. Pray for peace seems a way to get that message across. So you're not just saying to people, pray, because that's vague. So my goal is to encourage people to pray, because I believe when somebody prays, they get closer to God. And when they get closer to God, their lives change and things happen.
Right. And they develop an inner peace.
And first, if you don't have that inner peace, how are you going to bring it out into the world? If you're cursing a guy when he cuts you off.
Right. Be the change you want to be.
Yes.
See in the world.
Just like I said, right?
Like St. Francis.
That's true. And what Oswald said, the first quote, he said, we pray for us to change, so then we can change the world around us. So the goal is just to get more people to pray. And the reason I go to stadiums...
Well, first tell us the story how you got through to the stadiums, because that's big business. So now, how do you approach these stadiums and say, hey, how about praying for peace with me, or walking for peace? What type of people have you run into? Any opposition, or was it easy? How did it work?
Well, you don't get opposition, you just get no response.
Right.
All right? So it's like, but when I got back in 2008 to finish...
Which stadiums have you been on field?
Oh, Yankee Stadium, Fenway Park a couple of times, maybe 3 or 4 times. Philly Stadium, Mets. Those are the stadiums I've been on the field.
Right.
For.
And you have people with you who have shirts on.
Sometimes I have people with me, sometimes it's just myself and Joe.
Right.
But recently, last year in 2018, 50 of us walked from Grand Central Station, Yankee Stadium, for a Boston Yankee game, and 60 of us were at the stadium.
That's great.
Wearing Pray for Peace shirts. So the year before that, we had 50, and we're on TV for about 7 seconds or 8 seconds. So just getting the message back.
Now, did God put opportunities in your path, or did you just keep hammering on doors until you got in?
No, well, first you got to do some hammering.
Right.
All right. And I could do more hammering. I got to ask God for the hammer. More enthusiastic hammering. So my goal is just to ask. If I've done the asking, I've done what God wants me to do. No matter what the answer is immaterial. I've already done God's will.
Yeah.
So when I came back, when I finished the walk in 2008, 2009 came up, and the thought came to me, maybe I'll do another walk. I said, there's no way I'm going to walk from New York to Chicago again.
Right.
I'll walk from Fenway Park to Yankee Stadium, and I'll get Yankee Stadium for a Boston Yankee game. So I estimated how many days it would take me to walk. I looked at the Yankees were paying the Red Sox on whatever day it was. I subtracted that number of days, got on the Boston website, and sure enough, they were home playing the Mariners.
Right.
So they had this little contact us button. So I just pressed the button. I said, last year I walked from Yankee Stadium to Chicago to spread the message of praying for peace. This year I'm going to walk from Fenway Park to Yankee Stadium to spread the message of praying for peace. Can you do something? All right. Now, that whole process of me looking at the map, looking at the games, might have taken 2 hours. The next day, I kind of forget about it. Just it was a good idea. I'm not going to do it. 2 weeks went by, and I got a call. Fenway Park, Boston Red Sox. What would you like us to do? And I went. I go. Whoa, I don't know. I didn't say I don't know. I said, what do you have in mind? And they said, we get you on the game, we get you on the field for batting practice. We get you 2 tickets, because I told them about Joe, 2 tickets for the game. And we might be able to put something up on the big board.
Yeah.
Awesome, right? So now, my friend Joe knows nothing about this.
Yeah.
But when I called Joe up and said, we're going to be on the field at Fenway Park. Joe's going to say, all right, I'm in. It was like an I'm in.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
A classic baseball stadium. So we're getting ready to plan now to walk, and I go on the website again, and I say, wow, the week before, they're playing the Yankees at Fenway Park. So I said, it'd be great for me to start a Yankee-Boston game, Fenway, Yankee-Boston game, Yankee Stadium. So I called the girl up, and I told her I was perfectly happy. It's great, but I am going to end at Yankee Stadium for a Boston Yankee game. It'd be great if I could start at Fenway Park for a Boston Yankee game. And the girl goes, whoa, that's a big game. I don't know what I can do. And I said, if you can't do it, fine. Sure enough, a week later, I got there.
Good.
And as part of that process, I had 200 Pray for Peace shirts made in the Boston lettering. All right? And it looked great. Navy blue shirts, red, Pray for Peace,
Nice.
white around it with those spurs. They look great. Had them printed up in Boston and got to the game.
Yeah. So I know you're a modest guy, but how many people were at the game? You must have reached thousands of people by getting on field. No?
Yeah, well, you probably had. That's the reason to go to baseball games.
Right.
All right?
It's good marketing, yeah.
Well, I believe they are the largest cathedrals in the United States.
Hmm.
You know, you want to get the message out, that's where to go.
There was a time in the 60s when they were all filled with people praying for each other in the 60s spiritual revolution.
Right.
But that kind of died down. So it's good
But
that
in
you're
Yankee,
getting something in the
Yankee
stadium.
Stadium, though, when they play, and in fact at Fenway, when they play God Bless America, a quiet comes around that stadium.
Thank God, yeah.
Yeah, quiet comes around that stadium. So that was that. So I didn't finish that walk because I had a medical condition. And so humorous story about the medical condition. So I tell my friend Joe, I'm not feeling right. I'm going to sit in the stands. And Joe came up with a Coke or something, and he said, Al, your entire body just shook. I said, what? He said, your entire body just shook. So I have a pacemaker defibrillator.
Uh-oh.
I knew it was the defibrillator going off.
It went off, yeah. My father had one of those. Yeah.
So sure enough, EMS came, took me in an ambulance. They brought me to this hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Hospital. It was a 5-star emergency room.
Wow.
It was the teaching hospital of Harvard University. I didn't know that. So I'm in the hospital, and there's a curtain between myself and a woman, and she's talking to a friend. And I'm not going to tell that story. But I'm going to tell you another story. So I was in the hospital, and there was an Indian cardiologist, studying to be a cardiologist, very nice and meek like Indians are. And then this other doctor came in. He was like a guy from Brooklyn with an attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying, what did they do? What's wrong with you? What's going on? I asked him, you're wearing a badge? What's that? He said, I'm in charge around here. And I'm saying, when can I get out? Yeah, I'll tell you when you get out. So I know guys from Brooklyn with attitudes.
Yeah.
They might have an attitude, but they don't know anything.
Yeah.
So I called my cardiologist up and said, hey, this doctor is treating me. Who is he? And I gave him his name. I can't remember his name right now. Which he said, oh, you got to be kidding. He taught me in medical school, and he wrote the book on the condition you have.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that was taken care of.
Yeah. God took good care of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess he wanted you to walk more, huh?
He has. Well,
He gave you a shock and he put you back on your feet.
Well, I told you about last year. 60 of us walked from Grand Central Yankee Stadium. 50 of us were in Grand Central Stadium. Father Lewis, a Franciscan of the Renewal, these are the fellows with the hat.
Yeah.
He's praying with us,
Yeah.
and there's a picture of that in the Catholic newspaper.
Nice.
Grand Central Station.
Yeah.
So, a friend of mine, who I work with every now and then, who helps me out in some of my ideas, came up with this concept. He said, why are you just thinking about 60? You should think about 300. And I go, I don't know how to do that. That's all. First of all, those tickets aren't cheap. They're like $100 a seat. Now, I happen to break even each time. How much time do you have?
About 10 minutes.
Okay, so we happen to break even each time. And this fellow says to me, 300. I go, 300. And then he said, could you picture 300 people at Yankee Stadium with Pray for Peace shirts? Most of them walking from Grand Central Station to Yankee Stadium wearing Pray for. You'll get the message out. And then he said, there are like over 30 Major League Baseball teams in the country. Can you picture that happening at every place, every stadium? So I've been thinking about that for a while and said, Pew Research study came out with a study, and they said 75% of the people in the United States pray. Now, I was shocked. All right, I was shocked. So I belong to two anonymous programs, Alcoholics Anonymous and Prayers Anonymous. Nobody knows. We keep it a secret. We pray with our little groups. We might even pray together in our little groups. So I have that picture, and I said, boy, it'd be great to get the message out. Like, if prayer's good, why don't we spread the message? Why don't we market it like Coca-Cola? And as I thought about what my friend said, I said, could I just picture 75% of the people at a Boston Yankee game wearing a Pray for Peace shirt or carrying a Pray for Peace sign? The impact that would have. Number one, the impact it would have on the people in the stadium. And number two, 2 to 3 million people watch those games. They might question, what are they talking about? Like when the Pope visits the United States, so there's everybody knows that they are prayerful people. But Yankee Stadium, they're fans, regular people. So if we hit, so somebody said it's going to cost a lot of money. I said, no. All we want is people who are already going to the game to bring a sign in. I don't know how to get that done. All right? So we'll say a prayer. How does that happen? And then if you do that at Yankee Stadium, you could do it at Fenway Park and all the other stadiums, and we'll get the message out. We look around, and we know this. There's hardly any God in our society. How do we get the message out? It's you and me, people who pray already. Wearing a shirt like this, or carrying a sign, or doing a walk that spreads the message. It's not, it's not complicated. At least that's the way I think. Somebody might have a better idea. I'll be happy. In fact, I hope so. If somebody does have a better idea, they tell me about it, and I can work with them. I don't like being in charge of this. I'd much rather have somebody else do this, and I'll do whatever they want me to do.
Well, Mercy's not doing anything right now. Maybe you can help do it.
Yeah, it would be great if we could put a little Pray for Peace shirt on it.
Yeah,
we had a Pray for Peace walk in Stanford for the St. Patrick's Day parade, and there was a baby going to be on it. So we got all of these shirts made, and they got one of these onesies that they put on little babies. It has Pray for Peace on it. But the weather was so bad that they couldn't bring the baby. So I have this onesie at home, all right, with Pray for Peace on it.
Very good. Now, we only have like 6 minutes left, so why don't you focus on what you need people to help you with and put out an appeal, and then we'll pray on it.
Oh, so the first thing is clear. Pray. Pray. First of all, praying doesn't cost anything, and it doesn't take long. But so people could say pray for peace in their own hearts, pray that God will motivate them to do something.
Yeah, pray.
Just out of their prayer. Praying's enough, all right? Praying's enough.
Yeah.
That's huge. But if you could pray and say, God, what can I do to get prayer out into the world? It's difficult. I went for lunch with my grandson, Dylan. We sat down, we're having a Subway sandwich. You know how difficult it was me for say let's say grace before meals? Just something as simple as that. Grace before meals. And I looked at him, and he looked a little like startled at me.
Yeah.
You know, I said, we're going to say a little prayer.
Like a foreign language.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. It's like, gee. And I'm not good at praying before meals. I might be good for 1 out of 5 or 6 times. I'm great when I go to dinner with another Christian guy, because sometimes they encourage me to do it. But most of the time.
Yeah, it's true, though. God's always present, but sometimes we're not.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
You're right.
So, praying is just talking to God. You don't have to get silly about it. You don't have to have any particular God in mind. Just say, hey, I love you. Will you please help me with my life?
Mother Teresa has a quote in one of her little books where somebody asked her, how should I pray? And she says, pray. Pray. It's not complicated.
Yeah. Talk to God.
Yeah, pray.
All right. How much time do we have left there, Johnny?
55 minutes.
55 minutes?
To go? No.
55 seconds?
No. We're going to 55.
Well, we're on
Another
55.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Another 5 minutes to go. Well,
So listen, I just want to kind of summarize what I think your organization is about, because I've been... How long have you been doing this, by the way? Since when?
The speech I gave in 2005.
2005.
The first walk I did in 2008. And I've done so far I've done a number of walks. The long ones were obviously New York to Boston, New York to Chicago. Then I've done 3 New York-Boston walks, and I've done one 9/11 Pentagon Memorial Walk.
Nice.
To Ground Zero.
Right.
All right. And that's when I got on the Phillies field.
Right. Now, give us a guesstimate of how many people you've reached with
Thousands.
your message. What would you think? 10,000,
Thousands.
20,000?
I don't know.
More? How many radio shows and talk shows have you done?
I don't know. Number.
A lot?
A
Yeah.
bunch.
So you're really into this, and you've been into this for many years, not just once. So we've
Right.
been doing this every year, and you've been doing multiple walks per year sometimes, and multiple talks, right? So
Right.
you're doing a good job. So
Thank you.
I'm
That's
happy to
fine.
have you as a friend, and I'm happy to have you on the show. And I the same way with my cause, I don't depend on numbers. I mean, I know how many hits my shows get and how many the website's getting, but I don't care, because if I reach one person and it changes their life, but you've reached thousands of people, so, and I might have too, but I don't care, because all I care about is working for the God who works hard for me every day. And I talk to him all the time, and I know you do too, Al, and that's all we have to do, but we also have to listen.
Well,
Prayer has to become bi-directional. If it's just one-directional, if we're just talking and asking for stuff and not listening for a response, we get in a lot of trouble. So you got to listen.
well, it was like that stewardess,
Yeah.
all right, on the plane. And then once we had a group of us on the field at Fenway Park wearing Pray for Peace shirts, and a woman said, what organization do you belong to one of the guys? And the guy said, well, it's really not an organization. We're trying to spread the message of praying for peace. And she said, thank you. One of my sons just got back from Afghanistan, and one of them is there. It means a lot that you're doing this.
I think you and I are similar in that I think we're one of many seeds that are being planted all over the world that are being watered by God and are growing slowly the way they're supposed to, and are affecting millions of people, but not in a big way. And it's not like organizations or churches. It's like non-organizations. It's just people working from the bottom up to get through all this pride and stuff that's going on in our country. Because the pride is sitting on a lot of people and not letting them speak. And the pride is only 10% of the country, but you would think it was 90% by the way they control things. So,
I think it's 5%.
Yeah.
But they control the media.
Media is...
They control the media. And the news media, remember when we were growing up?
Yeah.
It was Walter Cronkite, a half hour. Now it's 24/7 on different channels.
Yep.
Guys with different political bends. Everybody's trying to make a point with their interviews, etc.
Right.
And the regular people, like somebody said to one of these commentators.
Wrap it up. That's the music. We got 1 minute left.
Okay, so somebody asked.
Well, listen to the music.
Oh.
Let it be, let it be. Let's just listen to this and close this show. And thank you for listening to Cry Oneness, my first live TV broadcast with my good friend Al Forte with his Walk for Peace organization. And he's a great guy. And thank you for listening to the show. And let's just close listening to this great song, Let It Be. Thank you for watching Cry Oneness. Good night and God bless.
We hope you enjoyed the program and will join us back for another show on WCAT Radio. This is Sebastian Mahfood. Good day.